Good morning, TFBTV viewers, or should I say great morning, because it's a great morning anytime there's a new pistol caliber carbine being introduced by one of my favorite manufacturers. I said new, but I didn't really mean new. You know, let's walk it back a little bit. Let's do a little story time, and let's talk about the H&K MP5 briefly, because I know we've done quite a few videos about this storied submachine gun on TFBTV. The H&K MP5, introduced roughly 1966. It's a pistol caliber carbine or a submachine gun, meaning more or less it's like a baby rifle that shoots pistol caliber rounds instead of rifle caliber rounds. Why was it so revolutionary? Well, that's because the H&K MP5 inherited the roller delayed blowback system used by its big brother, the HK91 or the G3, meaning that the H&K MP5, unlike, say, for example, an Uzi, doesn't rely purely on the mass of the bolt carrier group to delay the cycling of the action until chamber pressures drop to a safe level. Instead, it relies on a pair of rollers. Those rollers temporarily delay the cycling of the bolt until pressures have dropped to a safe level, meaning that you have a lighter recoiling gun and an overall lighter gun in the H&K MP5. The information about the operating system is important because I know whenever I get to the MSRP for this gun, I know a lot of you out there are going to say, well, I could just go to Palmetto State Armory and I could make an AR-9 for $419 and half a turkey sandwich. And it's like, I absolutely believe you. I know you can. But those inexpensive pistol caliber carbines are typically straight blowback, which means that they're also typically going to be less reliable than, say, something like an H&K MP5. They're certainly going to have more felt recoil. And once again, they're relying purely on the mass of the bolt carrier group to delay the cycling of the action. So not only did the H&K MP5 introduce a more sophisticated operating system into the pistol caliber carbine sphere, but it also did so while being accurate, durable, and reliable. You guys may remember a few weeks back we did a video with Larry Zanoff at Hollywood Weapons and Independent Studio Services. Larry has 16,000 guns in his warehouse, and he said the H&K MP5 was in his top 5 for the most durable, reliable guns that they use on movie shoots. And that's saying a lot.
Very revolutionary in the day when they first hit the actual law enforcement and military market, became a worldwide phenomenon, an icon again in 1980 when the SAS had to storm the Iranian embassy in London, and right there on ITV for all the world to see were these SAS troopers all in black, and what were they carrying? They were carrying MP5s.
Sure, and so far you found the MP5 series of guns to be the most reliable, the most durable of your entire stock.
For sure.
Guys, we're talking about a gun that's over 50 years old, that's still in use by modern day law enforcement, military, all through the world. At this point, you might be saying, okay, James, I'm sold. How do I get one? Well, that's always kind of been the tricky thing with H&K, hasn't it? Of course, you had the Gun Control Act, which affected your ability to purchase firearms made in a foreign country in 1968, domestically in 1986, basically meaning we couldn't have machine guns in H&K MP5 as a submachine gun. So there was an attempt to introduce some civilianized versions of these guns. So back in 1983, you have the introduction of the HK94. The HK94, essentially a civilianized MP5. There are some significant differences between the HK94 and the MP5 other than not having a giggle switch, not the least of which being a 16-inch barrel. Of course, to comply with the NFA, since these were being imported as rifles, the HK94 had to have a 16-inch barrel. They looked silly as hell. You had people either cutting them down and getting their tax stamps to make them SBRs, or even worse, you had people making them into pseudo MP5 SDs or putting these obnoxious barrel shrouds over them to try to make them look cooler. But at the end of the day, you were dealing with kind of an odd MP5 that didn't have a threaded barrel, that didn't have H&K's tri-lug adapter. And the tri-lug adapter, of course, 3 lugs at the muzzle end of the barrel that allow you to do a quick quarter twist on a silencer that uses spring pressure. It's spring loaded, quarter twist, it goes on and off. Very neat, right? The tri-lug, truly one of the gems of the H&K MP5 design, but you didn't have one with the HK94. You also didn't have, speaking of hallmark design aspects of the MP5, you didn't have the paddle mag release. So that made it a real bitch to change the magazine. All you had was the mag release button, which is really difficult to reach with your dominant hand. There is a Christ-like figure in HK canon. That is Marco from Die Hard. I've mentioned this in prior videos. Marco died for H&K's sins. In Die Hard, they were using converted HK94s, not true H&K MP5s. So they didn't have the tri-lug adapter, they didn't have the paddle magazine release. If you remember, there's that scene where Bruce Willis is kind of crawling backwards under a conference table and he's being shot at by Marco. Marco's gun goes dry and then he has a little mini monologue while he's changing magazines, which takes him about an eternity.
Next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate.
Because he doesn't have that paddle magazine release. So by the time he gets the mag out, that's when John McClane does his little pew, 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 under the conference room table, kills Marco. The end, all because the man didn't have a paddle mag release.
Thanks for the advice.
So in a period of less than 10 years, starting in 1983, H&K imports almost 16,000 HK94s, the civilian MP5, selling them at a $650 MSRP. I know that sounds affordable as we sit here today, but bear in mind, in 1983 dollars, that was over 1,700 bucks. So what about the MP5K? What is the MP5K? You're talking about an H&K MP5 that's been shortened, Kurz, German for short. Introduced in 1976, 10 years after the OG MP5. They shortened the barrel, they shortened the cocking tube, it's got a shortened bolt and receiver, which leads to a higher rate of fire. I've fired these in semi and in full auto, and I gotta say they are a joy to shoot. Cyclical rate has to be around 1,000 rounds per minute out of the much shorter H&K MP5K. Again, because you've got that shorter bolt, you've got that shorter cycling action. But they're fun as hell to shoot, they're controllable, and man, those things rip. They've also got a notched rear drum sight instead of the circular diopter sight. And with the original MP5K, the barrel stopped at the front sight base and a shroud prevented a muzzle device. There was also no stock on the original MP5K. 7 years later, you have the HK94 introduced in 1983 for civilians, and then in 1989 you have the SP89, which is the MP5K for civilians. It had no vertical foregrip unlike the original MP5K and no stock to comply with the NFA. 2 years later, in 1991, H&K introduces the MP5K-PDW, or personal defense weapon. It was introduced with a choke folding stock, a lengthened barrel, and with a threaded 3-lug barrel. So I don't know if this is actually how it shook out, but in my mind, I perceive it as this. H&K is like, look, the MP5 is pretty freaking sweet, but we want something smaller that we can use for, say, VIP protection or something you can stuff under a jacket, something you could hide easier, something with a smaller overall length. So we're going to introduce the MP5K. Then they introduced the MP5K and everybody's like, guys, this kind of sucks, like shooting basically a huge pistol without a stock. Really not all that great, not all that controllable, plus we can't put muzzle devices on it. Can't we do something about this to make it like the MP5K, like something smaller, but a little bit bigger with like some features that we like from the full-size MP5 to make it, I guess, a little bit more tactical, as much as I hate using that word. Well, that's when you have the MP5K-PDW. But at this time, 1989, the only guns that were available to you as a civilian, which weren't already like in the NFA registry, would be either the HK94 or the SP89, and neither of them were really that great of an option. So fast forward to 2016, that's when H&K introduces the H&K SP5K. That is the civilianized version of the H&K MP5K.
So on the table here behind you, what we have is the SP5K. The SP5K is kind of a throwback to one of the original guns that H&K made years ago, the MP5K.
Why didn't they just do the MP5 first? I don't know either. And really, in my opinion, out of the three guns I just talked about, that is the MP5, the MP5K, and the MP5K-PDW, the MP5K is probably the least desirable of all of them. You have no ability to mount a muzzle device, no stock, and in the civilian version, you've got no vertical foregrip, and on top of that, for some reason, H&K introduced it without a paddle mag release, which to me was the biggest slight of the SP5K introduced in 2016, was the lack of a paddle magazine release, and it was why I was never really interested to get one to begin with. It was the least exciting of the three variants that we just discussed, and on top of that, it wasn't even really that faithful of a reproduction, although they did add a Picatinny rail, a sight rail, at the top of the receiver. Finally, after over 50 years, in 2019, you guys remember my video, my TFBTV video from December of 2019, this past year, H&K introduces the SP5, and this was done right. This was the first true civilianized H&K MP5 in my opinion, and it was done absolutely perfectly. It showed that H&K was willing to listen to its customers. It integrated all the features that we wanted, and then on top of that, it's made right there in Obendorf on the same assembly lines as the military and law enforcement H&K MP5s. It was truly a semi-automatic version of the storied H&K MP5. And finally, today, as we sit here today, right now, H&K has introduced the H&K MP5K-PDW almost 30 years after it was originally introduced to the military and law enforcement markets. That's right, today H&K is introducing the SP5K-PDW, just like it introduced the SP5 last year. Both of these being the civilianized versions of their respective model numbers. Like the SP5 from last year, the H&K SP5K-PDW is a faithful reproduction. It has all the features that you or I want, and I'm already telling you I am buying this gun. It is made in Germany on the same assembly lines as all the other MP5s and MP5Ks, MP5K PDWs, and it can be imported because it's a pistol. So you don't have to worry about 922R compliance. If you decide to purchase the SP5K PDW, what I would recommend is either you man up, pay your $200 tax stamp, put your VFG on it, and get a stock for it, or if you don't want to go that route, you can just pick up the best possible brace that you can get, and for the H&K MP5 series, that would be the SB Tactical brace series. Those guys are awesome. To dig into the specs, the SP5K-PDW has an overall length of just 13.8 inches. It's 8.6 inches tall, and it's got a 5.8 inch long barrel with a 10.2 inch sight radius. It weighs 4.2 pounds. It's of course chambered in 9mm with a 30 round capacity if you're using the standard H&K MP5 mags. Obviously it uses the roller delayed blowback system from the H&K MP5, although as I mentioned, it has a shortened bolt carrier group. This one's got an ambidextrous safety. This has magazine parts compatibility, handguard compatibility, stock compatibility with the MP5K and the MP5K PDW, so parts are already out there. H&K is including the bungee sling, which is useful for creating forward tension to shoot it with if you're not going to put a brace or a stock on it. I happen to like the bungee sling. It's simple, it's effective. I did have some crusty old SAS guys in my H&K SP5 video from last year saying, you know, listen here, son, if you like that bungee sling, it's because you never had to use it in the line of duty. So fair enough. The SP5K-PDW includes a traditional handguard, including a hand stop to keep you from blasting your own mitts off. I saw reference in H&K's German materials to a slim handguard with quote-unquote H-key mounting, allowing mounting of 1913 pick rail at the 3, 6, and 9 positions. The SP5K PDW comes with the notch sights that were traditionally found on the H&K MP5K, and that is the rear sight drum. You can twist it and you can change the notch size, but it's only notches. It's not the famous diopter, the peep sight circles. So you would have a series of circles in the rear of the H&K MP5 sight drum, and those circles would align with a circular hood on the front sight base of the traditional H&K MP5. Circle within a circle targeting is apparently a lot faster and easier to use for the human eye. I happen to be a huge fan, so I was very disappointed to see the H&K MP5K notch sights on the H&K SP5, but fortunately it's a part that you can change out yourself should you decide to do so. It traditionally comes on the H&K MP5K. I don't know why. I'm not an engineer, I'm not an expert, so I don't know why they went with notch sights on the MP5K and the traditional diopters on the full size, but if you guys truly know, not like some wild ass guess, but if you actually know, I'd love to hear why in the comments. I spoke with H&K's engineers before I made this video, and they wanted me to emphasize that this is an H&K MP5K-PDW Navy. It's as close as possible to the military issued H&K MP5K-PDW, except the thread pitch is 1/2 by 28, which is slightly different than what they use on the MP5K-PDW. And that's great for us because most suppressors we're using, if they're 9mm direct thread, they're gonna be 1/2 by 28. And you've got the ability, of course, with the MP5K-PDW, you've got the ability to use a tri-lug adapter. Although I note that the handguard clearance is a little tight, so you might have to shave a little off the handguard, or you might have to double check to make sure that your tri-lug adapter for your silencer is going to be able to fit over those lugs and not butt up against the handguard. It comes with the Navy 2-position, 1-piece plastic grip / trigger group, unlike prior iterations of this gun, which used the older 2-piece stamped sheet metal and plastic grip. It of course has the paddle mag release. It has no sight rail unlike the SP5K, but it's really not that big of a deal because there are plenty of third-party manufacturers that make excellent adapters or Picatinny rail mounts that go on top of your receiver. I should mention though that if you do decide to add a sight rail on the top of the SP5K-PDW, you may block your own iron sights. So after all that, we want to know the two most important questions. When does it come out? How much does it cost? Well, it's out today, and it costs $2,700 MSRP. I mean, my opinion, I think it's worth it for what you're getting. I think that this is going to be a collector's item, and it's going to be an overall just damn fun gun to shoot. So I'm going to be picking one up myself. I know everybody is probably at this point shutting the video off and saying $2,700, that's insanity. I need my HK boys to get in here in the comments. Help me out, help me out. Tell everybody why it's worth $2,700 for a fine piece of reliable, durable German machinery that's an actual tool and not a range toy. I don't know. While there are some criticisms of the more dated H&K MP5 series that I've gone over in a series of comparative videos, including my H&K MP5 versus the SIG MPX video, including the fact that the MP5 doesn't have a last round bolt hold open, meaning when you change magazines, you got to manually cycle the action. It also has a very, speaking of, it has a very tight magazine well, no beveled and flared magazine well. It's like one of those little peg things that you had when you were a kid. You know, you have to get that peg just right before you can hammer it in. And yes, it's heavy-ish because it's not using a lot of alloys, a lot of polymers. It's steel, but at the end of the day, for a PDW, for a carbine, for it being 4 pounds, it's not too bad, right? At the end of the day, you're talking about one of the most reliable, most durable, most storied pistol caliber carbines / submachine guns of all time. This is going to be a collector's item. This is well done, it's well executed, it's a blast to shoot. I'm saying that this is a buy. Now there's one thing I don't want to lose sight of before I close this video out, and that is H&K listening to the consumer. I hope that means that they're thinking about maybe going and adding paddle mag releases to the original SP5Ks from 2016. That'd be kind of cool. But you have HK apparently listening to the civilian market, something that many of us never thought would happen in our lifetime. So bravo to you, H&K. I'm really excited about this, and I think a lot of you are really excited about this, even though you are going to gripe about the price a little bit. Guys, thanks a ton for watching. Thank you to you guys. You're awesome for watching our channel. We like our subscribers more, not saying I didn't like you, but we like our subscribers more, and we really love our Patreon supporters. And by the way, if you're interested in the SP5K-PDW, I would suggest that maybe you pop on over to Top Gun Supply, your online shooting sports superstore. And don't forget to feed that puppy at Ventura Munitions, the best online ammo store. Online, land-based, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're the best ammo store possibly in the entire world. You guys are the best viewers in the entire world. Stay tuned. We're going to be bringing you more from TFBTV.